The LEGO Batman franchise has been running for 18 years. 4 games, 4 different versions of Gotham, 4 different takes on what a LEGO Batman game can be. And with Legacy of the Dark Knight releasing this week to an 84 on Metacritic, it is the perfect time to go through every entry in the franchise and work out exactly how the new one stacks up against everything that came before it. Let's go in order. LEGO Batman. The video game came out in September 2008, and it was genuinely special in a way that is easy to forget now. At the time, LEGO games had existed for a few years. LEGO Star Wars had launched the formula in 2005. LEGO Indiana Jones had followed, and the formula was already established. You collected studs. You smashed everything. You solved simple puzzles by switching between characters with different abilities. It was fun. It was repetitive. And it had always been a retelling of something that already existed, a LEGO version of films the audience had already seen. LEGO Batman 2008 was the first LEGO game to tell an original story, not a retelling of Batman Begins or The Dark Knight. Its own thing, Batman and Robin fighting their way through Arkham Asylum after a mass breakout, while simultaneously the villains had their own parallel campaign where you played as the people you had been fighting. You could be Joker, Riddler, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, Bane, Catwoman, and Harley Quinn in their own missions with their own objectives. That villain campaign was one of the most genuinely clever ideas in the entire franchise's history, and nothing that came after fully replicated it. The gameplay was built around suits. Batman and Robin each had multiple costumes with specific abilities. The magnetic suit let you walk on metal surfaces. The glide suit let you traverse gaps. The demolition suit let you destroy silver objects. Switching between suits to solve puzzles was the mechanical core of the game, and it worked because each suit felt meaningfully different. You had to think about which one you needed rather than just cycling through options randomly. The tone was perfectly calibrated, dark enough to feel like Batman, light enough to feel like LEGO. The Joker planning a citywide crime spree, Bane smashing through walls, Poison Ivy growing plants in the sewers. All of it played completely straight in the LEGO universe, which made the humor land precisely because the game was not winking at the audience. It committed to the absurdity with a straight face and trusted players to find it funny. It scored a 78 on Metacritic. Reviewers praised the originality of the villain campaign and the suit mechanics, but noted the game was shorter than some of its LEGO contemporaries, and the story was fairly thin. Fans did not care about the reviews. It sold millions of copies and became one of the most beloved LEGO games of its era. LEGO Batman 2, DC Superheroes arrived in June 2012 and did something the original had not. It gave the characters voices. Every previous LEGO game had used grunts, gestures, and physical comedy to tell its story without dialogue. LEGO Batman 2 was the first in the franchise to include full voice acting. Hearing Batman and Superman bicker while flying across Gotham was immediately beloved. The chemistry between them carried the game in moments where the gameplay was not at its strongest. The second and more significant change was the introduction of an open world. LEGO Batman 2 built a version of Gotham City that you could freely explore between missions, the first open world in the history of LEGO games. It was not enormous by the standards of open-world games at the time, but for LEGO it was revolutionary. You could fly across the city as Superman. You could drive the Batmobile through the streets. You could find hidden collectibles scattered across rooftops and in alleyways. The story expanded the scope dramatically. Lex Luthor and the Joker team up to take over the world. Batman needs the Justice League to stop them. The entire DC universe, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, showed up in a LEGO game for the first time. For younger players in 2012, 2 years before the MCU had fully taken over popular culture, seeing the Justice League assembled in any game was exciting regardless of the format. The Metacritic score was 80. Critics praised the voice acting, the open world, and the expanded roster, but noted that the core gameplay had not evolved much from the original. The suit mechanics returned but felt less central to the experience. The shift toward a larger, louder, more character-stuffed adventure came at the cost of some of what had made the original feel focused. LEGO Batman 3, Beyond Gotham released in November 2014 and is the most divisive entry in the franchise. The ambition was enormous. The execution was inconsistent. The premise took Batman and the Justice League into space to stop Brainiac from using the lantern rings to shrink the worlds of the universe. It was bigger in every sense: more characters, more locations, more content. The playable roster reportedly exceeded 100 characters. 100. From obscure DC deep cuts to iconic heroes and villains across the entire publisher's history. If you wanted to play as Batmite or Killer Moth or Detective Chimp, LEGO Batman 3 had you covered. The problem was that with 100 characters and most of them sharing abilities, the meaningful difference between who you were playing as mostly disappeared. The original game had 7 suits that each felt distinct. LEGO Batman 3 had over 100 characters that largely felt the same. Quantity replaced quality. The open world was smaller and less interesting than LEGO Batman 2's Gotham. The space setting, while visually creative, lacked the grounded Gotham atmosphere that had defined the franchise. It scored a 73 on Metacritic, the lowest reviewed entry in the main franchise. Critics felt the game was too scattered, too bloated, and had lost the focus that made the originals work. The sheer volume of content could not compensate for the lack of cohesion. It sold well because it was LEGO Batman, but it was the point where many fans felt the franchise had drifted too far from what made it special. 12 years passed, no new LEGO Batman game. In between, TT Games made LEGO DC Supervillains in 2018, a DC game that was not specifically a Batman game, though Batman appeared. It was a step back toward quality after LEGO Batman 3, with a customizable villain protagonist and a more focused story. It scored an 80 and was generally well received, but did not have the cultural weight of the Batman-specific titles. And then the announcement came for Legacy of the Dark Knight, and 12 years of waiting had accumulated into a level of expectation that no game can fully satisfy. So how does it actually compare? Legacy of the Dark Knight is the most ambitious LEGO Batman game ever made, and it is also the most uneven. Those two things are directly connected. The open-world Gotham is genuinely extraordinary. 4 islands, each with their own architectural identity and villain presence. The Unreal Engine 5 visuals give Gotham a rain-soaked atmosphere that no previous LEGO game has come close to. It is always raining. The light reflects off the streets. Droplets slide down Batman's cowl in close-up. The detail is almost absurdly specific for a game aimed at families. TT Games built a version of Gotham that feels like a real city, dark and detailed and alive in a way the previous open worlds never were. The character approach is the opposite of LEGO Batman 3. 7 playable characters, each meaningfully different. Batgirl hacks computers and has a drone she can park in the air to use as a mobile grapple point. Catwoman's whip manipulates objects and her cats can access vents too small for anyone else. Robin and Nightwing use different weapons and gadgets despite coming from the same mentor. Even the two characters most similar to each other, Batman and Nightwing, have distinct enough tools that switching between them feels like a genuine choice rather than an aesthetic preference. The story covers Bruce Wayne's entire journey from training with the League of Shadows through decades of protecting Gotham. Each chapter introduces a new companion. You fight alongside Talia al Ghul early on. Jim Gordon partners with Batman to take down Carmine Falcone. Batgirl arrives for the Mr. Freeze chapters. Dick Grayson's transition from Robin to Nightwing plays out across the later half of the game. The ambition is to cover 86 years of Batman history in a single cohesive story, and by most accounts, TT Games gets closer to that goal than you might expect. But not all the way there. Some critics have noted the story is essentially the Dark Knight trilogy with references to other Batman eras scattered through it, rather than the full celebration of Batman's entire mythology that was promised. The Joker gets arrested in Chapter 2, then reappears robbing a bank in a later chapter with no explanation. The packing concentrates most of the relevant plot beats into the first and final chapters, leaving the middle feeling like extended side content with story stapled on. Matt Berry voices Bane with a performance that early reviewers have called phenomenal, and then Bane barely appears. Characters who deserve more are given less. The bugs are real. Characters get stuck in animations. AI companions struggle to navigate the environment. Enemies despawn. Nothing game-breaking, but for a game at this price point and this level of ambition, the polish is not where it should be at launch. The stealth mechanics, new to this entry, are the weakest part of the gameplay. The concept, using shadows and gadgets to take down enemies without being detected, sounds like exactly what a Batman game should include. The execution, according to multiple reviewers, is underdeveloped. Enemy AI during stealth sections is inconsistent in ways that undermine the tension the game is trying to create. And yet, the Metacritic score is 84 to 86. Critics who went in with reasonable expectations have come out calling it one of the best Batman games in a decade and one of the most entertaining LEGO adventures in recent years. The open world is genuinely compelling to explore. The villain roster, while focused rather than exhaustive, includes every character who matters. The tone, dark enough to feel like Batman, absurd enough to feel like LEGO, is perfectly calibrated in the same way the original 2008 game was. Game Informer called it a dream come true for lifelong LEGO Batman fans. Discussing Film called it one of the greatest LEGO games of all time. Screen Rant called it a near-perfect adventure. So where does it rank against the previous games? Legacy of the Dark Knight is the most technically impressive LEGO Batman game by a distance. It has the best open world, the best visuals, the most meaningful character differentiation since the original, and the most ambitious story the franchise has attempted. It is also the buggiest at launch, the most narratively uneven, and the most inconsistent in its stealth design. LEGO Batman 2008 remains the most focused and arguably the most purely fun entry, smaller, tighter, with the villain campaign that no subsequent game has replicated. LEGO Batman 2 has the best open world of the older games and the voice acting that changed the franchise permanently. LEGO Batman 3 is the weakest of the four and most people agree on that. Legacy of the Dark Knight sits above LEGO Batman 2 and comfortably above LEGO Batman 3. Whether it sits above the original depends entirely on what you value more, the focused intimacy of 2008 or the sprawling ambition of 2026. Both arguments are legitimate. Both games represent what LEGO Batman can be at its best in different ways. What is not in question is that after 12 years away, LEGO Batman came back with something worth waiting for. Not perfect, but substantial. And for a franchise that has been running for 18 years across 4 very different games, substantial is exactly what it needed to be.